Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. Welcome back to the Underwater Podcast and our final episode of Season 1. But don't worry, we'll be back in February with some more interesting interviews. Spending time with all these amazing creatives has been such a great way to distract myself from this very average year, and hopefully you've enjoyed listening too. Producing a podcast is very much like living in a bubble sometimes. There's no real feedback from the listeners, so it's hard to know if you're doing the right things, and fingers crossed I am, but I really love getting feedback from you amazing humans. So whether it's just a quick review or a suggestion of future guests, or by joining our Facebook group, any feedback is welcome. You can also help support the podcast by checking out our cool merchandise we have on our store. Just head to theunderwaterpodcast.com to check it out. Okay, this week I'm chatting with visual artist Christy Lee Rogers. Christy has a unique approach to underwater photography as she shoots from above the water, capturing the movements and contortions of her models below the surface and creating these amazing painting-like images that tell all sorts of stories to the viewer. We speak about how she found her process to create these photos, how music plays a large part in her work, and what the COVID lockdowns has done to make her pivot her business. Okay, let's dive in. Christy, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Hi, Brett. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. We've had so many requests for me to actually talk to you, and for me myself to actually, I've wanted to speak to you for a while. So this has worked out really well.
Oh, amazing. I'm happy to be here. And it's just great to be natural and talk about things in a light way and not be so serious. So I'm excited.
Well, that's pretty much what this podcast is about. There's not much serious about it. So this is perfect.
Good. We need that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you're based in Nashville. Is that where you grew up?
I actually grew up in Hawaii. And I still go back there all the time. All my family's there on Oahu and the Big Island. But I moved here from Los Angeles. I was living there for a while, making films and doing my art. And I just wanted to change. And I can really work from anywhere. I mostly just travel to shows and I can produce from anywhere. So I still go back to Hawaii and shoot, but I also started shooting here and found a great indoor pool that was heated. So I've been using that a lot. And I love Nashville.
Yeah. Well, what took you to Nashville? Is it just a nice place? Was it somewhere you visited or?
I heard about it. I'd never been here and we just packed everything up, and I'm kind of a wanderer. So I just wanted to check it out. And then we ended up staying. So I wanted a big city, but not too big. I wanted to get out of the big city, Los Angeles thing, and have a little bit more space and trees and beauty.
Great. Yeah, I think it's quite green. I think I've been to Nashville.
Very green. Lots of trees. I mean, I'm surrounded by trees right now. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, it's a bit of a change to LA where it's pretty brown.
Yeah. And there's a lot of water here. It rains a lot. So I love that.
That's great. So do you get out do you shoot in the open water very often, or are you mostly in swimming pools and tanks?
I'm mostly in pools, but I did start out shooting in the ocean and, spent my whole life in the ocean surfing and boogie boarding.
Oh,
and
nice.
I did test out in the ocean. It's much more difficult because it's murky and you've got a lot of movement and elements, whereas in the pool, I can control a lot of things. Yeah, and I did need that.
Yeah, I mean, your work, the work that I've seen recently, and like in the last couple of years, is very controlled. It seems very, very, I wouldn't say not necessarily precise, but it is very well thought out. How did you come about that kind of process?
Well, it started out very raw and natural and organic and very messy, actually, at first. It was just experimentations that I was doing in the water. And I'd been taking photographs for a really long time, but I wasn't very pleased with shooting reality. And I was a little bit bored. And as soon as I started shooting in the water, I noticed this magic that happened. It was like what I was seeing through my eyes and through the lens was very different than what I was actually capturing, because you get this refraction of light and this movement. It's almost like the water is this magical element that's just moving things and shaping things in different forms. So that's sort of when I started to get obsessed with the water as a creative source or as a muse. And yeah, it was very raw and messy at first. I was experimenting with, how far down, what's the depth I need to use, what kind of lights, what kind of movement, and bubbles. Oh, bubbles, big problem. And also I started to shoot from outside the water. So I was shooting in the water, outside of the water, and I was just testing what I liked. I probably tested for over 7 years before I released an image.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah.
So just because you kind of weren't happy with the final product, it wasn't ready for people to see, or what was the reasoning?
Yes, it wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I had perfected it, and I didn't want to bare my soul. I just feel like when you put out a piece of artwork, you're bearing a part of your soul, and you want it to be perfect, and you want it to say what what you intend. So when I did the Siren collection, I did things a lot differently. And all of a sudden I felt like I was ready to release them, and did my first show, which was very scary at first. And then, I got over it very fast. And I realized that the truth was more important, that this was who I was. And so I just started to become comfortable there. And then it, transformed over time, where I started to use multiple bodies and multiple colors. And, I feel like I just kind of kept adding new elements. My Reckless and Bound collection, which was my third collection, was very reckless. It was very raw, bubbles and movement. And I felt like I was kind of being a painter, where I was just splashing paint on the canvas and letting it go wherever it wanted to go. And that was probably, those first collections were very free. And then I started to perfect things and change things. And, I always have a concept for each shoot that I'm doing. So each year there'll be a new concept and something new I want to dive into and explore, and sort of ask questions about life and use my art as a way to find those answers for myself and for others.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And so were you an artist before you started showing underwater stuff? Did you come from other mediums, or was underwater where you kind of found your voice?
No, I was definitely always an artist, but in different ways. I started out with poetry and performance art and filmmaking. I actually was in love with filmmaking, and Fellini was my first, I would say, inspiration. I was just, fascinated by his films and what he could say without saying it. He could say so much just by not saying anything. And so, I was always experimenting, but I'd never released anything. I never did it professionally. And I would say when I found the water, that's when I decided that I would, go out there and start doing shows and start selling the images.
Oh, right. So that was your beginning of the gallery side of things, and the kind of producing the prints and the artwork.
Yes, absolutely.
That's amazing. So when was that? What sort of, and I don't want you to date yourself, but what sort of timeline, how long ago was that?
Well, I shot my Siren collection in 2008. And in 2009, after the market crashed, I released the collection and did my first show. And at first I was reaching out to some of the galleries, mostly photography galleries, saying, hey, here's the work. And, would you be interested in talking to me and doing a show? And everybody was, turning me down. Oh, right. we don't really know what this is. It looks like a photograph. I mean, it looks like a painting, but it's a photograph. So they really couldn't peg me. What is this girl doing? I don't know. And so nobody would accept me. So I decided, well, I'll just do my own show. And that was in Los Angeles when the art walk started to become a big thing. So I did a show with a sculptor, and we had thousands of people coming through because of the art walk. And that's when I really just kind of first got out there and started selling works myself. And then I picked up my first gallery shortly after that, and a rep. It's funny. It just kind of happened slowly after that first collection.
Right. And how did it feel? Like, I mean, I come from the kind of the side of things where I don't particularly think of myself as an artist. I create images, but there's no real, I don't feel like I put my soul into it so much as I what comes out the other end, I identify with, but like I'm doing it from the other end.
Right.
As someone who classifies themselves as an artist, what did it feel like to kind of realize that the work you were producing was good enough to show?
It's interesting, but after the market crashed in 2008, I lost everything, and I fainted. I remember I fainted and I hit my head and cracked my eye open. And
Wow.
yeah, it was a really bad time. And I sort of crashed down to this very low place. And it was during that time that I feel like I really became an artist. I started reading and writing a lot in my notebook. And I realized that I was going to make it out of this. I think at some point you think, I had no money. I mean,
right.
I had $100 and I'd go and rent a camera, the best camera I could find. And I said, I'm just going to shoot. And I started to write out these things in my notebook and realized that I had a message or something I wanted to share. And it was just about that, that feeling that I had that I was going to die. You just think you're not going to make it, or you're not going to survive. Yeah. And then I realized, gosh, it doesn't matter how low I get. I just keep going. I'm alive.
Totally.
I'm not going to die. And it was like this hope came back, and I started to put that message in my artwork that no matter how vulnerable we may feel, there's always this hope and this beauty somewhere in there that you just have to find. And so I feel like being an artist is also about having something you want to communicate to the world, something you want to share that's deeper than just a beautiful image. And that started to become more important to me. So, if you look at a lot of my images, it's really not about beauty all the time. It's not about a beautiful girl, perfect body. It's just real. And I do work with real models as well. And I'm more interested in communicating that we're more powerful than we think, and that there's hope and there's freedom on the other side. And that's really important to me because that's part of who I am and my quest, I guess you could say. And, we're all looking for the answers to life and existence. And so in a way, I'm using the art to sort of experiment and ask questions. So it feels good. It feels like it completes me. I feel like my life is completed being an artist and doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great that you've had that, you're on the bones of your ass kind of like artist's kind of journey too. Like you've kind of, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, it was scary. You don't think you're going to come out the other side, but then you have no choice. And that's, like I said, I took my last $100. I remember I sold a piece of artwork to a friend of mine for $300. I just needed some money. I'll make you this amazing print. And he supported me. And I think I took $100 and went and rented, I don't know if it was a Canon in Hawaii. And then I just went out to the pool and started shooting. And for 6 months, I worked on that collection and I just started releasing it. And it was it was my Odyssey collection. It was a very powerful collection for me. So yeah, it's interesting. And I know what it feels like to be on that side where, you have nothing. So I think it makes you stronger. For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that sort of thing, it strips away a lot of the, I don't want to say ego, but, a lot of the things that your brain puts in front of you to when you're down to your last dime and, the world is so visceral.
Right.
That's when the creation kind of either happens or it doesn't, I guess.
It really pushes you to a point, pushes you to the edge. And like you said, it strips away all this falseness, and you have nothing left but to just look at yourself and go, okay, this is me,
Yeah.
And I think that's what it takes, and I think that's interesting about this time as well with COVID and everything happening is that in a way, what I see is that maybe this is needed to strip away the false, life maybe that we have in front of us, where we take things for granted and to get real about who we are. And
totally.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, especially this time, like the last let's call it the last year, I think, I'm excited to see what kind of artwork is actually coming out the other end of this, because I know for myself, my commercial stuff dropped off. I'm suddenly, at home with my brain. I don't have this creative outlet that I get from my clients.
Right.
And so, I'm sort of thinking of things. It was like a gestation period, I guess, where I just spent the last year kind of brainstorming stuff.
Yes.
To create once things opened up again.
Yes, me too. And I was lucky that I had shot a collection back in August, and I was just sitting on it because I was so busy. It was going to be this amazing busy year. And this is August 2019. And so when COVID hit, I just decided, well, I'm just going to dive in and start working on this collection. And it's funny because it's transformed into something completely new because of everything that's happening. And I couldn't do anything else. I'd get so upset about what was happening and just feel this knot in my stomach. And I'd come downstairs and I'd just open up my images and get lost in them. And then I'd feel better. When I could, and I had all this administration stuff to do, and it was really busy time actually, but I couldn't confront those things. I said, I'm just going to dive into my artwork. So it's saved me in many ways. And I've been putting out images now every month. Instead of doing a gallery show, which I will usually do and release everything, I've just been releasing an image a month and, keeping that flow going and doing it online.
And so when you say you're releasing an image each month, like in terms of people in your online gallery to buy prints of one thing a month, or just in terms of...
Well, I guess everything. So, I work with galleries that sell my work around the world. And so when I release an image, I will make sure that all the galleries get the image, and that we sometimes it goes out to the press, and, we do the full thing. We're just, they might be emailing it to their clients. And then of course I'm putting it onto my website and posting it on social media. Here's the new image. And then also what I did this year was we did an outside installation because we couldn't do anything. So I did something in London where we just put up some images on the street,
cool.
Billboards on the street. And I said, well, we just wanted to be out for the public, and it had this really great message that we put on it. And so that's been my solution.
So did you actually go to London to do that, or did you do it remotely?
I did it all remotely. Yeah. We had a company we were working with that put it all up.
And would you have done it remotely before COVID?
I might have done it remotely as well, because I don't think there was anything I could do necessarily. We would have probably done it around a show. We would have released, had a gallery show and then maybe done also an installation as well. So,
because one of the interesting things that I find about the whole COVID situation and doing, talking to people through the podcast is how people have pivoted to kind of deal with the social distance of the whole thing, like doing things remotely or putting things only online, or, mail order printing and stuff. So, I mean, how has that affected you? Have you had to pivot?
I have, but it's been a good pivot. I'm surprised how powerful the internet is these days, and everybody's on it. And so if you're out there, putting it out there, I'm very happy with it. I did have a lot of shows that got canceled, and projects, some very big projects got canceled. So that was difficult. And then, even right now we're doing a small show in Paris that's going to be up for Christmas. It's just a couple prints, and then we'll do a big show in March. But we're still doing things. It's kind of amazing that there are still, projects. Everybody wants to do projects. I'd like to shoot. That's the only thing that's been hard for me, is that I did have a shoot that I was going to do. And, when things calm down a little bit, I'm going to do it, because I usually have a very, very small crew. It's just me and the models and maybe somebody else helping me. And I'd like to get that going again, because I'm also working on some video work, some moving images, and that's sort of the new direction I'm going in. Yeah,
I had a look at not your Instagram, your YouTube, and you have some amazing motion work on there. Is that reasonably new stuff, or is it stuff you've been doing the entire time?
I've been doing that the entire time. So I would do a shoot, and then I'd also be, rolling some video at the same time, but I wasn't doing it very seriously. It was just a side project. And then I'd make these videos, 1 or 2 minute art pieces.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to focus more on it where we're just going to shoot video and we're not, we might shoot some stills, but it's going to be focused on the video and, using better cameras because I was shooting with a Canon 5D Mark III and, I can't do 4K when I'm shooting with that. And we actually did some public installations of the videos. So we had them up in some public spaces and we'd have them at the gallery shows and people really liked them. We had the Venice Biennale. Did a huge video installation. And people would just sit in front of that and be, mesmerized. So I thought, I got to do this more.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I look at your work and I'm trying to think when I first found it, and I think it was probably when your Sirens series kind of went huge.
Oh, wow.
And I think I remember looking at the images and kind of wanting them to move. I mean, there's such a movement in that image.
Yes.
And and my kind of technical brain was like, how has she even done this? Like, it looks underwater, but then at the same time, it doesn't look underwater. And the bubbles are doing things that I've never seen bubbles do before.
Right.
And then it was like this, the curtain was drawn back and I'm like, oh, she's doing it from above.
Yeah, it's so funny because for me, when I first started doing that, I didn't think anything of it. But, because 10 years ago or 11 years ago, or actually when I first started, which was maybe 20 years ago, nobody was shooting underwater. You had Howard Schatz who had done some underwater, but nobody was doing it really. And so I didn't think there were any rules like, oh, you have to be underwater. And believe me, I tried underwater and I just didn't like what I was getting. It was too clear for me. I was capturing too much. I wanted that mystery and the darkness and I was able to capture that from outside. So and then getting back to the moving image too, I would like to start making more breathing images where it's just this beautiful breathing movement, very soft, and I think that is the future also of still images, is, movement, a little bit of movement.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things that has certainly got me thinking about moving images more in terms of, like you're saying, like breathing images are the Apple screensavers. I don't know if you have an Apple TV, but the Apple screensavers are these very slow motion movements. Like through a landscape, or they're a drone shot, or they're underwater. And it's just this, the slow motion of it, the slower it is, the more I sit there and look at it.
I know. I've seen that actually. And you get lost in it. It's so peaceful.
It's incredible what it does to my brain. Because, if it was normal speed, I probably wouldn't really be that interested in it.
I know. There's something magical about this slow speed for sure. And I'm actually working on something right now, which is working with special effects producer as well. So we're taking my underwater videos and doing something kind of special. And I can't say too much about it because we're still doing testing, but it's going to be very magical and take you to this whole nother world.
Love that.
Yeah, there's a lot to do on it, but it's exciting because it's, we're still in that beta stage. We're figuring out all the problems.
And is that taking images that you've already shot through this process, or is it stuff you need to read to shoot for the project?
Well, we're testing with some of the new footage that I shot last year, but I definitely need to shoot more. So I am ready to shoot exactly for this. So I've got to use a different camera, and I'm seeing what the problems are, because you know how it is. You can only get somebody to go underwater for 30 seconds to a minute, So that's, and then you've got the bubbles and, you don't want to use all the first part of the footage when they're just going down into the water. So there's a lot to figure out how to perfect that.
Is there a thing with your style and your technique? And I think this is what blew my mind, was that I'm an underwater shooter. I only ever think about things below the surface.
Right.
Or I think about things on the surface, but you're still out of the water at that point. And so when I saw your work and you're under the water but shooting from above, that was kind of genius to me, because you get all that, you're looking through that surface, you're having it kind of distort and it's changing and the bubbles are staying there for way longer than they would be if you're under the water. Is there a certain depth that you want to keep people at, or are you really using the entire sort of water column?
It really depends on the shoot. So with the Siren collection, I shot in a very deep pool, and it was great because the light kind of falls off and you get this darkness. And then I started to test with more shallow pools so that I could use fabrics and colors and really see that. So there is a fine line, and that's interesting. A little bit too deep, and you don't get to see all the colors down,
right,
in the water. Too shallow, and you've got too many bubbles happening at the surface. Too many bodies in the water. 5 bodies go down together, you're going to get a lot of bubbles. And so there's this fine line, and I'm kind of researching now and figuring out what works best. But yeah, it is interesting because you get that refraction of light, right? Where, that thing where you put your hand underwater and you're going to go grab something in the pool, and you think it's here, but it's actually over there.
Yeah, the light's bending.
The light's bending, yeah. So I didn't realize I was using that effect, but that was the natural effect I was using. And nowadays in Photoshop, they have all these tools of blending and blurring, and it's just not the same, but that's technically what's happening.
Well, I think that was the thing. Like in my kind of thought process of trying to work out how you did this, there was a moment where I was like, is this just liquify? Is this just like the Photoshop liquify thing? But then I'm like, no, it's more detailed than that. It's more organic than that.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I knew Photoshop better, because when I first started out, I just knew basic things, how to get the photo in there and crop it and, be able to send it to people and things like that. I'm not a very technical person. So yeah, I sort of had to teach myself. But yeah, nowadays I can see that there's all these tools, but it's really not the same. Something happens when you capture it naturally.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. And I think in the last couple of years, I've really become obsessed with getting stuff in camera.
Yes. Me too. You just know what you're going to get right offhand. I mean, for me, I'm looking through my lens and I can feel it and see it. And I'm not even using light meters. Everything is actually very dark. My camera is saying, low light and, but I'm just pushing it visually. I just kind of go by my eye to see what I like.
Are you using constant lighting or are you using strobes?
I'm using constant lighting. Yeah, no strobes.
Yes, so you can see straight away that what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah,
oh, that's beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah.
So one of the guests we had on previously was a photographer in Canada called Steve Richard.
Yeah.
And he does something similar to you, but probably the other end of the scale where he's shooting from above the water. But he is wanting, and he wants it to be crystal clear. Like it looks like it's shot under the water.
Right.
But the way he's doing it is he's shooting from above, but making getting the models in situations where they look like they're upright.
Right. So, yeah, and that's possible too. I mean, you really can do anything if you know how to tame the water, because I'm sure he's got to tame that surface and make sure that all the bubbles are gone.
Oh, he does. And his kind of process for it is really methodical in terms of he built himself a little pool in his dry studio, and it's only about 3 feet deep, and it's like it's almost like a wading pool. And
interesting.
Yeah, so he has models, they go under, they have to hold the pose for long enough so the surface reflection on, the ripples aren't there. And if he's not getting what he wants, he's like deleting photos on his camera as he's going. He will only keep the one shot that is the one that he wants.
Oh, wow. That is so interesting. Yeah, I would like to build myself, and I have a plan to build a pool for sure, because I'm also shooting at night, and so I've got to wait till nighttime to do any of this work. I'd love to be able to shoot during the day, but there's so many ways you can capture anything, and that's, you just have to dream it up and then experiment with it like he
absolutely.
did.
Yeah. And that's why I love the two of you. Like your work is nothing like each other, but you've taken the same approach of shooting above the water and just come out with totally different results.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I feel like I also want to start going underwater. Like the last video I did, I was underwater and the water was really murky at that point. So I was shooting into the light and I was like, I just need to try something different. And it was great. It was beautiful in a different way. So I'm going to start doing different things as well and just, pushing it.
Oh, absolutely. And was that the sirens move,
Yes.
video?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, that was beautiful too, and that's a beautiful. There's depth to it because the water is kind of murky, and you get that volume, and the light has it has texture to it.
Right. Yeah, I did like that, and that was literally 10 or 15 minutes of shooting at the end of the night when everybody was exhausted. And I said, let me try this one thing, Right. So again, I'd like to experiment more with that, where I have more time. And that's always the thing you're pushing up against when you're shooting underwater, right? Is time, because the models can only go for so long and then they're wiped out. So,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you were talking about having projects and things that you kind of had to put on hold. When you talk about projects, are they things that you're driving, that you're coming up with, or are you having people and maybe companies coming to you to kind of create stuff for them?
Yes, I started to do some commissions recently, and I've never done them before. It's funny, I've always just created my own artwork. But yeah, recently I've had more people reaching out to me to do commissions. And so those were some of the projects that got canceled.
Yeah. And so what does a commission look like? Is it someone who's wanting a portrait of themselves in your style, or is it a company that's wanting artwork from you for a purpose?
Yeah, it's more of a company like with Apple. They commissioned me to do some shots with the new iPhone. And fortunately, we did that in, I want to say November, December. And then they did a behind the scenes where we were just really testing out the new iPhone and, because you can just stick it underwater. And so they did a little behind the scenes, and I created a lot of images for them, but I think we ended up using maybe 6 or 7 images. So some more projects like that. And those are a little bit more difficult for me because I am so set on my style and my communication, I guess you could say, for the images. But, so far, like with Apple, they let me choose the creative. So they didn't want to even come in the way of my creative. And so I got to choose, and I chose to do sort of a space renaissance. That was what I called it.
Yeah.
And so I had these, we had these LED lights underwater that looked like little balls. And so we made them look like little planets.
Oh, cool.
So it was all done in camera.
Yeah.
And then we were casting, certain colors across the top of the water and just experimenting with light a little bit more.
So that's beautiful. And so let's talk about your kind of lighting. How are you approaching that? Have you got lights under the water and above? Is there a mix? What are you kind of doing there?
Yeah, there's definitely a mix, and it does depend on the pool that I'm using. So each pool is just a different situation, and I do like to have different pools. I don't really like to shoot in the same pool each time because I don't want to have the same shots, So, Siren was shot on Mulholland Drive in Los Angeles on a very, very dark night. There was a moon, and that one was just lit underwater, So, and then I started to use more light outside the water because I started having more color and fabrics. So it just depends. It's all done by eye. I just see it, and I might go and do a test and see what kind of lights I need. And then I do keep it very simple, though. I'm very raw in my approach and organic. Yeah. And, I don't want lights or any technology to slow me down or come in the way.
Right. So you want to be quite agile.
Yes.
And what about post-production? Is there, you mentioned that you're not great at, or you weren't great at Photoshop. Is there much that you're doing these days? Are you compositing any images together, or is it all in camera?
Well, okay, so I started out, and I was kind of known for doing everything in camera, and I wasn't doing anything to the shots. And then on these last collection, I have been shooting plates. So I shoot several plates and stitch them together very naturally because they're, they can go wrong very fast, especially if the lighting is different. It's actually very difficult. And I didn't do all of the images like that, but the longer ones, I started to shoot them on plates because I'd realize, okay, this person is perfect, But then this person is the face is, destroyed because of the water. So I didn't want to lose that whole image. And so, and it's funny because for me, it's not about the technical aspects. Again, it's still about communication. So if I can get the communication through, I'm kind of willing to go down whatever path I need to. And I'm not good at this stuff. It's very raw. I'm not this, Photoshop expert. So it's still pretty raw. And I would like to I try to keep everything, of course, as in camera as possible. Like lighting, I'm not changing a lot in the lighting. There were some images where I just pulled out certain colors, and that was kind of interesting. So I'm experimenting. I guess that's what we could say. I am experimenting and seeing how far I can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to approach it because what I'm kind of getting from this is your work is very experimental and even shooting from above, you have no control over what the surface of the water is doing. And
right.
What you're getting is very kind of experimental. And then if you're taking it into something like Photoshop, then you can even, keep experimenting and keep kind of creating that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's become a long process for me where my post-production process is, I'm staring at these images for hours and hours and just months and figuring out exactly what I want to say and what's powerful. And it's funny, every day changes. I just feel a different way each day. So I live with the images for a really long time before I release them. And, so it's definitely a process of, that I love. I love, that's my favorite part actually, is the post-production part.
Yeah, I think the post-production is kind of, it's an important step in the whole thing. And for me personally, it's when the image really comes to life.
Yes.
What I'm shooting in the pool is the raw materials. And then, like I'm the sculptor in Photoshop, that's when I'm chiseling out the actual object,
Right. And you get to see them on the big screen and it just changes everything. You really start to feel the emotion come through from just a certain glance or look. And, it's funny because a lot of the shots that I like are sometimes mistakes. I had one shot from my Odyssey collection that I had the girl in a mask. I was using a lot of masks back then too, but the mask kind of came off when she went down under and then she came out of the pool and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I messed that up." And then it's funny because the shot, something happened to the mask. It's like the top part went over it and you couldn't see it. And it became one of my most popular shots. And it was this mistake. Yeah. And that happens all the time.
See, one of the reasons that I love underwater is because of that kind of chaos that produces beautiful results. Like you don't have complete control over everything.
Right.
And I feel like that, the fact that I'm open to things not going to plan.
Right.
That's when I do my best work is, the right situation happens.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because I will plan, I write out in my notebook and I have all my plan together of what I'm going to shoot. And then I show up and I sort of have to let go of everything. And it's scary. It's a scary feeling because you don't know if you're going to capture it because the water is so wild. But then as it's happening, you have to be there. You really can't be lost in some other place. You are right there and nothing else matters. And I think, I always just know now because I've done it so many times that it's going to work out and I'm going to capture it. And I keep pushing. I mean, there'll be some times where a couple hours into the shoot and I know I haven't captured anything.
Right.
It's all bubbles and all mistakes. And I can't get the models to be comfortable. But we just keep pushing and pushing. And then it get them comfortable and we fix things. And then somehow it starts to work, and then, it's scary at first. And I've had whole shoots where I didn't use any of the images because they just weren't good enough.
Right.
So I'm also very a perfectionist when it comes to that. But I know how to push it, just so far to get exactly what I need.
Do you go into it with an idea, like are you an exact idea of what you want, or are you kind of going in there with a conceptual idea and if you get that ballpark, you're happy?
Yeah, I definitely am planning the elements that I want and the costumes and the colors and the movements and the models. And then I have the concept, this is what I want to say. or
Yeah.
express with these images. And then, then I let go. And then we sort of go off in whatever direction the water is going to take us and the models. And then I just keep pushing it. And that's why I like to shoot several nights in a row or take a day off in between, because then I can look at the images and go, okay, that wasn't working. So how can I push it to get what I need? So
Right.
the best is to have a day off in between, look at the images, and then go back in and try to correct things or, resculpt them.
So how are you directing with the models? Like, it must be really hard for them to know what you're getting and what you want, when they can't see what you're getting.
Well, okay, I do show them images throughout the shoot, and that's been very successful action for me to, I explain what we're doing, and I don't explain it until they get to the set, because I don't want them overthinking it and trying to practice or anything. I want them to be fresh. And then we discuss the technical parts of how their body is going to be positioned, their neck, their arms, hands, everything, facial expressions. And then it's almost like I'm setting them up like an actor. This is the scene you're going to, perform.
Right.
And then we just kind of practice and they come up for air. And then I'm constantly giving them directions.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is not working. And then I'm showing them images. Okay, you see how this really works and this didn't, or, here's, so, and that really helps them, because they don't understand when you go down underwater, you're just lost. You don't even know which way is up or down. And,
No.
Right. And so by showing them the images, it makes them happy that they see, oh, okay, it's happening and I'm doing it, and they can see what's going wrong,
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Because one of the things that I'm really impressed by is, when I shoot underwater, I'm underwater with the model, and we're generally doing stuff in a normal orientation in terms of, it's as if they're floating above the ground.
Right.
Whereas for you, shooting from above, they've got to fight the drop of their own legs. It's very three-dimensional in terms of, even the distance from the surface makes a difference.
Oh, yeah. If their legs are further up than their body or their head, the body is out of proportion. So that's one of the constant things that we're fighting. And then also keep in mind is that when you put your head back, the water goes right up your nose. It's not like when you're standing in the water where you can stand there and do these beautiful poses for a long time. But yeah, with the position, the water's going up your nose. So I have a whole routine for that too. You have to kind of get comfortable letting the water sit in your nostrils without sucking it in, and then be willing to blow it out when you come up, which is not very attractive. And some people don't want to do it, but I said, just do it,
That's
just
right. Yeah.
Get that water out. And then they become really good at it once they've done it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people will, it's kind of uncomfortable and a little painful to start with, but you get desensitized to it, I think, if you do it enough.
Yes, you do. And a lot of them, it's funny, as they start out, they might be kind of scared at first or nervous, and then go, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. And then they get better and better. And then they kind of feel this sort of accomplishment at the end, especially when they see the image and they go, oh, wow. I mean, taking something so difficult and making it look beautiful. So that's very satisfying for them. And also because I'm not really working with models, I'm working with just normal people that are creative, dancers and I like that. I like that they're just normal people, never really modeled too much before, never done this. And so it's a challenge. And that's also what I'm capturing in the image, is that sort of going from that vulnerability into this very hopeful, beautiful place,
Yeah. Do you think you would get a different look if you used professional underwater models as opposed to people that were just learning?
It's funny because I think so. I have worked with some people that are models, and I don't want them to be posing too much. But fortunately for me, it's so difficult that even when you try to pose underwater, you can't.
Totally.
You just can't. And I think they realize that too. Wow, I thought I was going to go down there and do this beautiful move. And then my mind just shut off, because all I'm trying to do is not have the water go down my throat and my nose. And,
Yeah.
And the light's shining on you, so you can't see anything. And, you're wondering, and you've got all these people next to you. So, this guy's foot is in this person's, mouth, and it just becomes chaotic down there. So it's funny because on some of the shoots I have captured some behind the scenes and everybody is just laughing and laughing because like I said, this guy's foot's in this person's mouth and they're like, how did we end up like that? So it's fun, but yeah.
I think that's one of the things that really grabbed me about the images as well was the number of people that were in there. I mean, I knowing now from some of your work that they might not all have been there at once, but it looks like you've got at least sort of 5 people in the pool at once.
Yeah, I've done 6 at the most, and that's difficult. And that's what I started to see is that I can't get everybody to be perfect down there at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely have shot a lot of people. And you're also dealing with the bubbles. So, let's say 6 people go down together. One person messes up and they run out of breath and they come up and then your shot's kind of wrecked. And then we start over again. So I started to run into those problems. How can I get everybody to at least do 30 seconds where, there's not a foot kicking the surface of the water? That happens a lot too, where they're trying to get down and sink. You've got to blow out the bubbles so you can sink.
Yeah.
And then the legs are flapping and the top of the water is getting messed up. And so, boy, I was just going, wow, I'm having a difficult time with this, but it is possible. You just have to practice a lot. And maybe I have to have a deeper pool for those. Cause I think I had a 4-foot pool when I was doing that. And it's hard to sink. Your body just wants to come right up right away.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've got all that fabric in there as well. Are they all wearing these outfits, or is there like loose fabric in there as well? What's the kind of?
Yeah, there's lots of loose fabric in there. I mean, I have just buckets and buckets full of fabrics, and you'd be surprised, but you put them in the water and they all clump together in this one little tiny spot, and so you've got to keep dragging them out. And it's a constant fight with the fabrics. They float off that way into the deep end, and that's probably one of my biggest problems as well is wrangling. I have to have somebody there that wrangles the fabric. That's their job.
Is that someone in the pool, like pulling the fabric out and getting it set and then they move out of shot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Where they'll have a pool stick, where they're just moving that fabric back in and positioning it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because when I saw like I think it was 5 people and then all the fabric, I was just like, man, this must just be like some sort of chaos. And she's just captured some amazing shots of chaos.
It is chaos. That's what's so fun about it. It's pure chaos. I mean, it's not supposed to work. I mean, okay, this is the funny thing is that when I first started doing this, I mean, somehow I captured it, right? And then I said to myself, oh, I won't be able to do another shoot because this is impossible what I'm doing. This is not supposed to work. And it's really not supposed to work. I don't know how it's working, but I would get scared after a shoot thinking, this is my last shoot. I can't do it again. Yeah. And then, 6 months would go by and then I'd feel, okay, let's try this again, but it's not supposed to work. I can tell you that I mean, I shoot a lot of images and I'll tell you, there's only a few that are good. There's not a lot. Most of it is junk.
Yeah. I mean, what's your kind of hit rate? Are you like in a session, are you shooting hundreds or thousands of images?
Thousands.
Yeah.
Thousands. Yeah. Thousands for sure. And then, I might put out 20 or 30 images a year. So I'm not putting out a lot of images for, and a collection will take me with the pre-production and the shoot and the post-production about a year. Right. And yeah, so 20 to 30 images is not very much considering how much I'm shooting.
Yeah. And what do you do with those outtakes? Are you keeping them or are you dumping them?
I keep everything. I'm weird about that. I have all my hard drives and I can't bear to throw them away because I have gone back sometimes and looked through them and thought, wow, I didn't see this image. Your perspective changes every day. So I don't know how I'm going to feel, 6 months from now and I look at them and I think, oh my goodness.
No, I totally agree. I'm the same. And that's why kind of Steve Richards' kind of approach kind of stressed me out, because it's like, are you deleting everything? Oh my God.
I could never.
I mean, I do this thing where, so I have, I have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of images over the years. And every now and again, I'll sit down and I'll do a random slideshow of everything I've ever taken. Yeah. And I'll usually find something in there that's a gem that I'd never even thought of, because it was 5 years ago and, I moved on from that. But now I look back at it and go, oh, that one was awesome. Why did I not choose that one?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do that throughout the post-production process too, is that I'll go through, I choose my favorites. Maybe I'll start working on some. And then a month later, I'll go through them all again, fresh. And then I'll choose new pieces. And then, there's always pieces that show up that, oh, okay, I didn't see that expression, or I didn't feel that at the time. Always.
Yeah. I find it amazing how your own brain can change how you view things, and I say this to my clients and my models, is that the closer you are in time to when you shot it, you're going to feel differently days after.
Oh yeah. I don't actually even look at the images for days after the shoot. I know a lot of people want to jump in. I might jump in and look and make sure I got it. Yeah. And then I have to let it go. I just disconnect from it for a while.
I feel you have to, because otherwise you're influenced by what you were trying to do on the day, or what you were seeing on the day.
Right. Yeah. Just a little rest also, because usually I'm pretty wiped out after a shoot. I need to just rest, do something different, and then coming back fresh. I mean, I think a lot of artists do that too, where even if you're a painter, you got to take a little break. And a musician does that a lot too. You got to take a break and disconnect, and then you come back in fresh.
Yeah. You need like a palate cleanse or something, just to kind of, as you say, come in fresh.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of influences, I mean, obviously there's a lot of painters in this. What are you seeing? Like, what are you looking at to kind of keep yourself moving?
Well, it's funny. When I first started, I was mainly into reading, a lot of reading, and music. And filmmaking. So Fellini was definitely one of my first influences. And then I was moving over into music a lot. And then I started reading about space and time and these really big concepts that I didn't quite understand fully. And that was what was inspiring the first works. And it's funny because I did make a decision not to look at any visual references when I created Siren. So I didn't want to be influenced by anything visually. And so I didn't look at anything. And I just wanted to be pure and raw. And definitely, and then it's funny because then everybody started to compare it to these Baroque painters like Caravaggio. And I went, oh, I didn't even see that. I wasn't paying attention to that. Yeah. I like drama. I love dramatic lighting. I love shooting at night. Yeah. And now, I mean, I definitely love Baroque and Renaissance paintings for sure. I mean, it's, but I wouldn't say that those are the things that are inspiring me. I think my biggest inspiration is music. I listen to it all day long. Right. I mean, I can't be without music playing in the background.
Did you have music playing while you're shooting?
Yeah. Yeah. We had Hans Zimmer playing on the last shoot.
Oh yeah.
The whole time. Yeah.
Wow. See, that's beautiful, because I have this picture of you in a darkened pool house or something, and with these lights on, and it seems very, very cinematic anyway. So having that kind of soundtrack's beautiful.
Oh, it was great. I mean, when I can have the music, I will. We did have a pool once that had music underwater, which was beautiful. Yeah. And so I would say also films are very inspiring to me. The movie Interstellar, where they're going into time as well. And that I get lost in these questions, and so for sure. And then lyrics. I love lyrics. So I listen to Muse, the band Muse. They're one of my favorites. And a lot of my titles of my pieces are little pieces of lyrics that I string together. And I'm keeping a notebook of all the titles, because the titles are really important for me as well, because they finish the communication of the piece. And, there was one from my Muses collection that I named Our Hopes and Expectations, and that's straight out of a Muse song. So, and then I guess the other inspiration also would just be, humanity, us,
Right.
the things that are going on and problems. Like I'm really trying to solve some problems, mainly that has to do with freedom and my own freedom and searching for that. So it's a lot of things coming together. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a visual thing.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm expressing myself visually, which is the only way I know how to express myself.
Yeah. You're processing it and then pumping it out through the visual medium. Yeah. That's beautiful. Christy, this has been so cool. It's been awesome just to get an idea of how you kind of approached this whole kind of mind-blowing kind of technique. It's so cool.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you, Brett.
Thank you. And we'll speak to you soon.
Okay, speak to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. If you'd like to support the production of these episodes, you can purchase our very cool merchandise at theunderwaterpodcast.com. We've got branded coffee mugs, stickers, beer cozies, and posters featuring our amazing illustration and logo by Joe Hodino. If you'd like to connect with us or learn more about our guests, you can reach us at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram. We also have a Facebook group where you can discuss the episodes and even get your questions answered by the guests. There's a link to it in the show notes. You can learn more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring at brettstanley.com or Brett S Photo on Instagram. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.